Hi, and welcome to this beautiful conversation with the lovely Alana Helbig. Hi, Alana.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So lovely to have you. So my name is Karina Ladet, and I'm an intuitive channel, a healer, and a mentor for conscious entrepreneurs. And today I have the great pleasure to speak with Alana, who is a storyteller, a podcaster, a mentor. She's a beautiful woman from Australia. And if you haven't listened to Untangled, her podcast, you should definitely check it out because it's really, really magical. So I would love for you, Alana, to share a bit in your words about who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Karina. Yeah, so I am a podcaster, a storyteller first and foremost, I think I would call myself. And as you said, I have my podcast Untangled, which I guess is really my passion project. So the Untangled podcast is really sharing stories from people all around the world who have untangled from lives, from social constructs, from systems, from lives that potentially weren't right for them, and questioned the constructs and systems that we're a part of, and then built lives that were more in alignment with the truth of who they really are. And so the core question that I kind of ask in Untangled, or that kind of drives all of my interviews, is what does it take to follow the inner pull to create a meaningful life? So we look at what that really, because often we hear the end stories, but we don't actually delve into the nitty gritty of what it actually takes to really build a meaningful life, whatever that looks like for you. So that's kind of, and the storytelling aspect of it is really important to me, because when I was going through my own untangling and transitioning into more of a life that was more in alignment for me, I found it really hard that there was a lot of advice giving online, and I couldn't connect, because it actually made me feel that there was something wrong with me, because everyone else kind of had it figured out and I didn't. But through the storytelling, once I started sharing stories and asking other people to share their stories, I really saw that we are all the same. We often, we all have different experiences and we're on different paths, but we all have those same feelings that come up. We all go through dark periods. We all go through times where we're confused about who we are, and that is part of being human. And so through the stories, they bring us and connect us together. So that's why I'm really passionate about that storytelling element. So I've been podcasting for 2.5 years now, and a year and a half ago I decided that I loved it so much, I decided that I wanted to teach other women how to podcast as well. Because what I found when I started podcasting for myself was I just Googled and found everything for free online. And that was great in the sense that I have a technical background, so the technology stuff wasn't too much of an issue for me. But what I found is that a lot of the free stuff out there is created by men, and it's very structured and strategic and very technical, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's an important part of the podcasting process. But as I dived into actually podcasting for myself and wanting to have those really deep connected conversations and stories that I was really craving, I realized that the strategy and the tech was like only 5 or 10% of what podcasting was really about. And then there was this whole other world, the energetics, or what I call the soul of podcasting, which no one was really exploring or talking about. And so I had to kind of, stumble my way through and kind of work it out myself and call in tools and bits and pieces that I'd learned from other areas in my life and kind of pull them in to really get better at podcasting, because I loved it so much and I knew I could get better if I just stuck with it. So as I did, I decided that, I should want to support other women to do the same. So I'm a podcast mentor. I call myself a podcast mentor now. And I also have my online program, which is Ignite, Podcasting for Changemakers. And this is really blends that strategy and the soul of podcasting together. So you have all the technical stuff, which I explain in really simple, easy to understand terms, because there's so much rubbish out there that just, adds a whole level of confusion we don't need. But then we have the soul of the podcasting component. So what I'm talking about there is things like learning how to hold sacred space for people in an interview, delving deep into your limiting beliefs and fears that might come up, using the podcasting journey as your own tool for growth and evolution, and as a platform for really sharing your message and diving deeper into the gifts and wisdom that you're here to offer up, the art of powerful storytelling, and just like a whole heap of other stuff that I feel wasn't covered and is especially relevant for women, I think, in the podcasting realm. Finding your voice, mothering yourself through that, all of that kind of stuff that sort of comes up for us when we have to put ourselves out there in front of people, which podcasting requires us to do. So that's really my work at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, Alana. And I love the mix of the soulful stuff and the storytelling and that tool and practice, and also the technical stuff, because I've been wanting to start a podcast forever, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But every time I start finding out more information about it, I get either overwhelmed by the techie stuff, thinking, I don't know if I have time for this. And then it's always the same. Like, do we just figure everything out on our own, or do we find someone we can learn from, and then we can use those tools, and it kind of saves us time? But if we do that, we have to find someone that really resonates. So I'm super excited to sign up to Ignite this time, because it's going to be so lovely. It'll be so much fun and also to share that journey with others as well, because I find that it's such a beautiful journey, and that of having conversations and even just sharing whenever things aren't working so well. And like you said, I find that a lot of things in business are never really about the practical, technical things. Sometimes we stumble on that, but it's always like the biggest work is definitely the behind the scenes and the doing the inner work. And because that's the stuff that even if we get everything right, if we haven't done the inner work, it doesn't work. Like, people don't find us, or we end up attracting the wrong stuff, and it's just, it becomes really, really difficult, and we struggle a lot. So
yes, definitely. You just don't resonate because people just really pick that up. Absolutely. And that's been such a key learning for me, I think, with the podcast, but then also stepping into my own business as well. It's really, I think if you're wanting to do anything that is an offering from your soul, whether it's your business or it's, a podcast, as we're talking about in this instant, you have to be willing to do that deeper inner work. Otherwise, you can't create something like your soul. A soul offering is you. But if you're not willing to, it's an offering from you, it is part of you. But if you're not willing to really go deep with you, find out, what really makes you, what you're really made up of, then you're not offering the totality of what you could offer. What's the word? Like, it's the potential of what you could offer. You're not really ever reaching that because you're not doing the deeper inner work first, and that it's just a requirement whenever you're doing something from soul, I think. And sometimes I find that even if we can get our businesses to work and they can become successful, if we're not doing it, at some point it's like not having a solid foundation, right? At some point it's going to crumble, and even if it's working on the outside, you're probably going to feel miserable because there's something that's not, it's like trying to build on something that isn't solid or that isn't true somehow, and it's just really tricky. So it's super important. Totally. And that's something that I teach in Ignite, actually, is the energetic foundation laying. So, and that's such a core part of anything that I do now. I actually didn't realize that this was something that I was doing until my friend, who's an intuitive healer, said to me one day, have you ever heard of energetic grid laying? And she explained it to me, and I was like, oh, that's like energetic foundation laying. That's what I have been, doing the whole time. And it's so right. You've got to lay that foundation first. And quite often, as we're laying that foundation, we need to dive and do that kind of like clean up, look at what limiting beliefs are coming up, what stories we have there, what wounds we have there as well. Because if we're not cleaning that up, we're laying a foundation which is infused with some of that stuff. And then it's kind of, like you said, kind of wonky, and you try to build something on it, and it doesn't quite work. And I also think too, that's why, we have so much stuff out there, so many cookie cutter approaches to, like, this sales funnel earns you a 6-figure income, or like 6 steps to whatever. And I hate that stuff, because it's never worked for me. And I think that's because I try to do it without doing that foundational work first. And if I'd done that foundational work first, I would have been clearly instructed, that's not right for you. This is how you need to build that now. And that's one of those benefits of having that foundational structure there, right? You can take, like, you're tuning into the vibe of it, you've got the foundation laid there, and then you're getting instruction around what it is that you're going to create on top of that. And that's hardly ever a cookie cutter approach to something.
No.
It's
such an individual journey, even if there are things that are overlapping and we recognize other people's stuff and our own stuff, but it's always going to be like unique for you in that moment. And even if you've done the clearing and the releasing of your own, inner patterns and stories, it's always going to be a bit new every time, or a new layer, or maybe we just wish there was 6 steps to that, because sometimes it gets so messy, but we know we can't really do that like that, right?
I think that's an old, outdated way of doing business that we have now evolved past. And that's why it doesn't work, because we've evolved past it as business owners, but we've also evolved past it as consumers. So, or clients, or however you want to look at it. So if you're doing it as a business owner, it's not going to feel right. And as a consumer trying to consume that, it's not going to feel right either. So that's why it no longer works.
Yeah, good point. Because we do keep growing all the time and growing into new things. And then it depends on what kind of business you want as well. But I find that if you want it to be really genuine and soulful and heart-centered, well, it has to be genuine and soulful and heart-centered all the way through. You can't do the superficial tools and then still, like, I think it has to seep into every part of our business, and ultimately into every part of our lives, because that's when you feel that it's that it's really aligned on all levels. And you can sense that when you're connecting with someone online, or you're reading something, you can tell if it's like wholehearted somehow, like if it seeps into everything, or if it's just in one area, right, for a certain specific reason.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
And so I would love to know what have your biggest challenges been in, like, starting your business and growing your business, and what's been like the most challenging or sticky for you?
Like everything. It's definitely not an easy ride, is it? It's just not.
No.
Look, I think that the biggest thing for me, the biggest challenge for me has been definitely, it was really what we were talking about before we hit record on this, but it really has been my own self-worth stuff, how much value I place on what I am offering and putting out there. And this goes far, far back in my journey. Possibly it's even an old wound from a past life or wherever it is, but anyone who's kind of like in my community probably gets sick of hearing me talk about this like core wound that I have, which is there's two stories which I used to run, which is I have no gifts, and deeper to that was I have nothing to offer. And there was a long period of my time when I was in a deep, dark transitionary period. I was going through quite an intense untangling, sort of like my whole life was overhauled. And I spent a good 7 years unhappy in my past life, but not knowing where I was to move forward to. And but knowing that there was something more for me, and that kind of feeling can be beneficial in that it propels you forward. But that feeling was also kind of detrimental to me at some points, because I wanted to be further along than I actually was. And then because I was in that dark period for so long, I started to spiritually wound myself. So I started to tell myself, you don't have any gifts, you have nothing to offer, because I was looking for my purpose, right, for so long and couldn't find it, but it just wasn't my time. So when I did eventually come out of that period and step into kind of like offering the work that I'm offering now, and I started doing that about 18 months ago, that was like huge sort of things that I had to really work on and be really aware of, that were infiltrating into the different parts of my business that I was creating, and that I really did have to do a lot of work to clean up. And I wouldn't say that, I would say that those stories are still play out. They're just over time I've chosen not to listen to them, even though that they're still there, and make a different choice. Like, let's say today, for example, I could have just said no to you to doing this because we didn't really have any questions planned out, and there's an inner part of me which freaks out about that and says, but you have nothing to offer if you can't plan it out. What are you going to say? What if you forget? What if you stumble and fall? But over time, and I could listen to that, or I could or like I did here, I chose to say yes to that. And by saying yes to that, that story there loses some of its charge, loses some of its power over me. And then gradually over time, it has less and less charge. It has less and less power, because I'm not kind of like fueling it and feeding it all the time. So that's kind of that's what's influenced me. That's sort of how I've worked through it. How it's kind of played out in my business then has been, I think for the first 12 months, I basically made pretty much no money in my business, or very little money. I was completely undercharging for a lot of my services. The old stories that a lot of us women have in online businesses that we do. Yes. But also just really struggling to make sales, to have people connect with me, and a real sort of sense that I wasn't being seen. Like I was doing all of this stuff, but and it looked beautiful, and it was, I knew inside like that it had great content and it was amazing, but it wasn't being noticed, it wasn't being seen. So I've had to really work hard constantly at those stories, my worth, and how I show up around that, what energy I'm emitting around that all the time.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people, and especially women, recognize that story, right? Of because it's like taking a place that we're not so used to taking, and doing that wholeheartedly. It just brings up, I find it just brings everything up, all the stuff we've been managing. But you can't do that in a business like this. You have to really work through it, or it's just not going to work. And then when you're creating and expanding your business, you kind of just have to keep doing it. And I love how you describe that too, how you choose a different story and you work through every time. And I don't know if we're ever done with that. I mean, I think we all have different things playing out. I mean, I cried the first time I had to get paid for one of my readings. I mean, I didn't even choose it myself. A friend of mine said, "Here, Karina," and I had done like hundreds of readings, probably thousands. And she's like, "Here, I'm going to pay you now." And it was like €50. So I thought it was way too much. That's like what, probably $70 US. And she's like, here's the money. I just paid you for this reading. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. And you're a friend. And she's like, I don't care. This is the first paid reading. And now you're going to ask for money. And it was just the hardest thing ever. And now when I think back, I'm like, oh, wow. Because it doesn't seem like such a big deal. But for me, it was huge to ask for that in return. And then I think also when you feel the shift as you do grow and you go, oh, actually, this feels right. Because there's always something, right? And when you start like receiving clients or receiving money, as hard as it can seem before, once you do it, it's actually a really beautiful thing. It just makes the exchange more equal, doesn't it? And people who love what you do, they're really happy to give you money for it, right?
Yes, definitely. And yeah, I think, I resonate with what you're saying. I didn't cry when I received my first payment, but I remember always having this, like when people first started buying my Ignite program, I would have this, when a payment would come through, I'd have this deep like, oh my gosh, like there's not enough in the program. I haven't like given enough. I've got to like, what else can I give them? Kind of like that kind of really, like that what I had created wasn't enough, but it wasn't what I had created. It was like my fear that I wasn't going to be enough. Right. And that person was going to catch me out and see that I, really had nothing to offer and there's a level of always wanting to please people and make sure that they're happy, which I think is good when it has boundaries around it. You definitely need that in your business, but with boundaries around it. So yeah, I know what you mean about that. And I don't really know that. I think if someone is listening and they're experiencing that in some way in their business, I think that's just something that you work, for me, I don't know about you, but it was something that I just gradually, slowly worked through and had to go, okay, like what's really going on here, and doing that more self-excavation work and I think it's like giving yourself the time to just work through that stuff. Think, oh, that's a horrible feeling. I just kind of want to fix it or push it away or, whatever it is. It's like, okay, this is a reason that's coming up here. And now I can spend some time sitting with myself, figuring out what is really going on here. And yeah, that kind of process of sitting with yourself, especially when something is perhaps quite deeply ingrained in you, you've just got to give yourself the time for that, I think. Yeah, that's a great point, because sometimes we want to fix quickly because we're in the middle of a launch or we're doing something, but these things take time. And I used to think that was kind of in the way for the real work that I was doing, but I realized that these are the key points, right? That is the work. And when you work through that, as if by magic, things flow from there. And if you try to push it away, it just keeps coming back, right? So that is where you should focus your attention. And when you do, and you don't resist for like too long, you can keep going. I find that that's what changes over time. Not so much that it's not scary or uncomfortable, but that I don't spend as much time resisting it, so I can actually move through it a little bit quicker, although it's not really a quick fix. But I don't spend as much time running away from it, because usually I find that it's the resisting that usually is painful. Once you're actually sitting with it, it's not that bad. It's just the actually sitting down and doing it, right? Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Because I think the resistance here is, like I always use the analogy of you're kind of like, you're sitting just next to the pain. You're not in the pain. So you have that real discomfort, but you're not getting any of you're feeling the discomfort of the pain, but you're not getting any of the benefits of the pain. And the benefits of the pain is that you have these realizations and you begin to start to heal and you learn stuff about yourself and you start shifting things. When you sit to the side of it, you're running all of the stories, you're like stuck in it and you're never actually moving through it. So yeah, resistance can be really tricky like that, I think. But yeah, taking the time to really sit with yourself is the work.
It is the work. Unfortunately, some days we're like, really? I've done this before. Do I really have to? But yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you if there are any like pillars for like creating a sustainable and successful business, whatever that means to you, that are really key to you, have been so far?
Well, one of them, I think, and I've made a few notes before we started, but one of the things that I put at the top of my list, so I know that this one is really important, is the like honoring my cycles. And I know this is important because I don't do it as much as I should. I don't honor my cycles, and by cycles I mean obviously my feminine cycle, but my creative cycle, my financial cycle, just my energetic cycles, all of that. There's a whole, ebb and flow to everything that I'm doing. And I say I probably don't do it very well because I think my background is in a corporate environment with an IT company, which is, very masculine and long hours, and obviously Monday to Friday, sometimes weekends, those kinds of things. And I think in the corporate world, or in that sort of patriarchal structure, we really are expected to be on all the time, and that's gauged as if we're showing up to work and we're doing the work, that's gauged as valuable. Our outputs are gauged as that's what value and worth is placed on. And I think that, so, when we come out of that kind of situation and we move into our own business, there is a level of untangling and relearning that we have to do to step back into that more cyclical or like ebb and flow nature. And I think a part of it for me is I'm naturally like that, in the sense I naturally want to just go. And I do quite a lot feel very energized from working, but that energy can very quickly become almost like manic or over the top, where because I haven't had any downtime, so then I'm just kind of like running on adrenaline, and I'm just like skimming the surface of what's going on. And I'm finding if I'm not honoring that, then I can't actually hear myself properly. So I can't hear that inner voice that's guiding me. If I'm just like here and I'm like pushing through, that voice is saying, don't launch that on that day, or wait, you've got to do this thing over here first before you can take that step there. I don't hear any of that. And I just push through, and then nothing seems to work. But also, there's obvious things of like you burn yourself out if you keep doing that all the time, and those kinds of things. So for me, I'm really trying to make a real conscious effort. Just recently, actually this morning, I was writing in my journal about it as well, and flipped back through my journal and saw I'd written exactly the same thing a couple of months ago. And I was like, come on, Alana, you've really got to work through this now, because you can't sustain that kind of work forever. And what else was I going to say about that? No, it's gone. But yeah, I think for me that's been such a key part of it, is learning what my cycles are. Even now, like I will probably block out or try to make that week of my period, or just before I get my period, a pretty quiet week. I try not to do mentoring sessions or like say booking interviews or anything in that week if I can help it. I'll do the very bare minimum and then just allow myself the rest. Because I think that I've really seen in my business too that the energy that I'm emitting at that time is whatever I'm creating is infused with that energy. So if I haven't been looking after myself and honoring myself in needing those downtimes, then I'm creating from a space of emptiness, not fully potent, not fully in my true power. And so whatever I put out there is not going to reach the full potential that it could have, because I wasn't taking care of myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think it really comes back. It's like remembering something we know, but we've been taught something else for a long time. And then society that has the same rules, right? And I think deep down inside us, we know there's something's not quite right with it, but we still have to remember that, and then keep remembering it when we forget, right? But the wisdom is there, and then trusting that if I stop when I feel like I need to stop, will I have the energy again? Will everything work out? And it's like practicing to trust yourself again, to trust your body, to trust nature. And then you have those glimpses when you do trust and you go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I needed, and it's working, and you see it around you and you feel it inside you. And then building on that. I think it's such an important one, and I feel that's really part of that kind of feminine energy and wisdom as well.
Yeah, I think too, it's definitely linked. I don't know. I think for me, it's definitely linked to that worth story as well. It's like, if I'm not working, if I'm not like doing all of these things and ticking these boxes, if I'm just kind of like sitting back, and there's a time for sitting back and there's a time for inspired action. You've got to do both in a soul business. You can't have one without the other, or anything in life. But I think, there's a level of worth that's attached to that. If I'm not working, how am I going to create anything? Then how am I going to make money? How am I going to, all of that kind of stuff starts to come up as well. So really having to retrain yourself around all of that's deeply ingrained. Yeah,
and that's quite a rebellious act, I find, to be like, no, actually I'm not. So you must be really busy in your business. You must be working really hard. And to say like, actually, no, I do the things I need to do, and I have time to create, and I have time to rest, and like to keep honoring that no matter what, because sometimes we're just really alone in that way of thinking, except for maybe our online entrepreneur friends. Right? It's so funny because sometimes I'll go outside in my garden. If I'm doing a long distance healing, sometimes I go outside and I lie in my garden and I send healing, because I don't have to be in front of my computer. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And once in a while my kids will come by and they'll be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working. Like, what do you mean you're working? And I love saying that, because I'm like, that means that they also associate lying on the grass in your garden as work. And it is, right? Or integrating, when I've done a lot of energy work and I just need to like lie on the earth and not do anything, but I am doing something, but it's not very active, right? And that's also part of the work. Sometimes it's even bigger than the more active part.
Definitely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And, for me, it's also this thing of like, I'm preaching to people about questioning the constructs and things that we're a part of, that we have been, I want to say brainwashed, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
we have though, right?
that we've kind of been programmed to believe it's the right way, and this is the way you earn money, and this is what a job looks like, and all of those kinds of things. But and we're all of us are really always untangling from things. But I think this is such a core sticking point for me, where it's getting more and more where it feels so out of alignment, where I'm working in this way, and it's just like I can feel it now, like there's a heaviness there where it's like, this is not working anymore. And then there's a misalignment, because I'm saying to people like, question the constructs. Where does it feel heavy for you? That's an indication that you need to explore that. And so, I think that's a driving force for me as well. It's like, okay, you've really got to eat your own dog food.
It's like teaching what you need to learn. But it's, I do that too. And I hear myself saying this stuff and I'm like, Karina, you have to get your act together, right? But I feel like with this, the untangling, or like realigning to really who you are, it's like sometimes we can be really, really far away from that, and we take steps towards how we want to feel and like our true selves, I guess. And at the beginning we're quite far, so occasionally we'll feel great and in alignment, And a lot of the times we won't. And then slowly it's like we get closer and closer. And I find that now I've been doing a lot of inner work and like very intensely the last probably 15 years or so. And now I really feel that every time I step outside of that alignment, gosh, I feel so bad. And it's like I come back very quickly. And I think it's just the practice and having the right tools and to just keep showing up. And for me, it's been a lot to do with like being compassionate and kind to myself, that I don't have to beat myself up, that I don't know better and that I haven't gotten it right yet. It's like, it's just, you're just stepped outside of it. Isn't that great? Then you know you don't want to be there and you come back in again. And just being kinder and more loving towards ourselves, because this is big work. I mean, it's huge, right? So it's fine if we don't get it right, because it's definitely not like a quick fix. It takes lifetimes probably.
Yeah, and I also think, like, when I look back, if someone asked me, you know, I think I wrote down here in my notes when you said, let's talk about how do you run your business intuitively. And I wrote down, like, I run it through all of the mistakes. I've learned how to do that through all of the mistakes that I've made. You know, it's through these big mistakes where I've learned, oh, I was told very clearly then, don't do that, or, you know, that felt really heavy when I felt into it, but I did it anyway. And now look at this mess that it has created from it. And just doing that over and over and over and over again. Maybe I'm a slow learner, but then eventually you go, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to try something else. So I think, it's like that whole thing of like, they're never mistakes, are they? They're just lessons redirecting you back to your truth. So definitely have to be kind to yourself around those. And I just think curiosity around that too, rather than, oh, I did this thing again. It's like, what really happened there? How was that feeling? Why did I choose that choice? Like, really just without judgment, being really inquisitive around why the human part of you chose to do that particular thing when the soul part of you told you very definitely don't. So, and that's how you learn about yourself, which is cool.
And that's such a great point, because there's gold in that, right? The times when you finally, usually it's like you're choosing someone else or something else over yourself, and there's always something to learn there. Usually that's where the wisdom is, right? And you pay attention, you see it, and then you see yourself again and again, and it's like you keep fine-tuning that. Okay, so I can choose myself or my own well-being over a potential client I don't know. Okay, cool, I got that one about right. And then, oh, I don't do that for when it comes to my partner or my family or someone who impresses me, right? Or my mentor. And it's like, and every time we get a little bit braver and a little bit more loving towards ourselves, right? And truer to who we are, until we, I guess, build enough trust and confidence that a lot of the stuff seems to like fall away, and we can be more in that zone of, I guess, flow and that inner alignment.
I call that being the slipstream of your soul. So that's beautiful. Kind of where everything seems to just flow. Or, you know, it's not, I mean, everything flows. Like, no, everything does not flow. I'm like, I would say right now I feel like I'm in quite a slipstream for my business, but does everything flow? No. But I feel like when I'm choosing to remain in that, like in that vibe, in that slipstream, that things are, that there's more synchronicities and there's more things that happen to really support me on that path, because I'm there and I'm choosing that again and again and again. Doesn't make it easy, doesn't mean resistance doesn't come up, doesn't mean I don't sabotage myself sometimes. It doesn't mean, you know, things don't sell or I don't like my bank account's full or anything like that. But it just, there's an ease to what it is that I am doing, and a deeper level of support that I can feel, which comes with that.
And that's really beautiful, I find, because that means no matter what's happening on the outside, you can still have access to that, because it's not necessarily because everything is perfect and we have everything we need that we feel that inner sense of ease. I think it's something that when you feel it, to me, that's a solid thing. Like that's a foundation.
Yes.
And if you know how to access that and come back to it, even if you slip in and out,
Yes.
that's gold, because that means everything can crumble around you and you can still feel that.
Really solid. Absolutely. And I think sometimes in my life, like I just did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I really talked about I spoke at an event, and I really talked about, you know, my life before I went through a huge transition, and then my life afterwards when I started my business. And my life before that looked from the outside really perfect, but on the inside I was really just a shell of who I really was, and I felt kind of like I was dead on the inside. Whereas I had gone through that big transition and I started my own business, my life looked like a shambles. It really, from the outside looking in, you would have said, don't start that business, go and get yourself a job, what are you doing? You know, like really could have talked myself out of it, but because I could feel that deeper level support and that inner connection with myself, that's like, this is your time now. It actually didn't matter what was going on around in the external world. So, I mean, it still mattered. I was still like, how am I going to buy food? And some days I couldn't, and you know, things like that. But like, it still mattered, but I could keep connecting back to here and taking instruction from here. And that was guiding me. And it was louder and stronger than the voices that were saying, warning,
yeah.
don't do this.
Yeah, that's the thing, that the other voices don't necessarily disappear, but your inner voice becomes so strong that you can still kind of keep listening to it. And I think that's that's a really beautiful thing, because that's like the beginning of the journey somehow, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Okay, well, beautiful. Thank you so much, Alana. And do you want to mention a little bit about Ignite, your program? Because I know the early bird ends tomorrow, and people still have a few days to sign up before you start the program in about, 10 days or less, 8 days, a week or so?
Yes, I think it's starting on the 16th of October. We kick off on the Monday. Yeah, so Ignite is for anyone that wants to start a podcast, for women mainly, or for women, yes, and or for women who already have a podcast but they're not feeling it, and they want to kind of want to rework it, rejig it, go back through it, do some of the more soul aspects, the energetic side of it. I can help. Ignite helps with that as well. So Ignite's an 8-week program which starts on the 16th of October, and it has 6 weeks of new content, and it has 2 integration or break weeks in week 3 and week 6. So that just gives you kind of time to catch up. But I always get asked, what happens if, I can't finish the program? And that's why I've given lifetime access to anyone who joins, and you can join future rounds of the program for free if I run them again, because every woman moves at their own pace on the podcasting journey. And I really actively encourage anyone who's starting a podcast, whether you decide to join Ignite or not, to do it at your own pace. And so, like, for example, some women in the last round, they finished the program in the 8 weeks. Some women are only launching now, and some women are joining for the second round, and they just did, say, like the first 2 modules, and now they're ready for this round to do more. So you have that lifetime access. And there's a Facebook group, of course, but I think we need a lot of support in the early days. There's lots of questions that come up and stuff like that. So I'm in there doing live bonus trainings and answering any questions as they arise, and just making sure that you're really supported on that journey. And then, of course, there's options to work with me one-to-one as well as part of the program if you're really feeling like you need that. So it's heavily, heavily supported. I hate these programs where you buy them and then you don't see the person that you bought it from at all. I really do not like that. So, yeah, you'll be seeing a lot of me. So if you don't like my face, I probably wouldn't join you guys. that's totally fine. But if you are vibing with me, yeah, you'll be seeing a lot of me, and that will be really awesome. So
that's beautiful.
The early bird cart closes tomorrow, which is on Tuesday the 10th, and then the full cart closes on Thursday. So
yeah, so last days to join, because I've been thinking of creating my podcast for like forever, and so I figured why not now, right? And having support, I think, is really important, and I really love that it's part of how I do business and what I give myself. So I think it's really awesome, and also it's very affordable. And from listening to Alana's podcast, I know it's just amazing how you do that. So for anyone who's interested in Alana, check out her website. I'll leave the link below, as well as Ignite if you're curious about starting your own podcast or expanding what it is that you do with the podcast that you have now. And then you can find my website as well at the end of this video, and then if you want to get in touch, that would be awesome. Thank you so much, Alana, for taking the time, and I can't wait to connect more in your program. And thank you to everyone watching this as well.